Good morning. And I know it's afternoon for some of you, but just barely. But welcome to the November webinar. And we're having a good conversation about our businesses today. And if you're seeing this, the full webinar, and you've seen it visually, we've titled it, Take a Swim with the Shark. And I guess for the purposes of the next few minutes, that's me. And there are two questions underneath of it. First is, are you a serious business person? Which is an interesting question for some of you to ponder. One of the uniquenesses of our design in World Financial Group is, of course, we allow people and encourage people, typically, to start part-time. Go ahead and get in the shallow end. Let's not try and learn to swim as a life or death scenario right from day one. Let's do it part-time. You keep your full-time employment or profession, and you test the waters, so to speak. And you're in the process of, I guess, in one sense, finding out if the business is for you. See that in quotes. But most of the people I've seen that have gone on to make a go of this business, to be their own individual success story, took it seriously from the beginning. I started part-time, but I probably had a full-time mentality. I certainly was excited about it. I would lay in bed at night thinking about what could happen and what I wanted to make happen. Cindy and I would talk about it all the time. And because we saw something special, and we didn't have to put out a bunch of money, none of those things are required, but because you don't have to put up, $1 million franchise fee or a $50,000 franchise fee or a $250,000 franchise fee and assume a bunch of expenses, then doesn't mean this doesn't have a huge upside potential and isn't a serious proposition. But because you don't have to do those things, because there isn't a lot of overhead, usually you're plugging into an office or other people are paying the expenses for the beginning till you get an office in there too, and then it's usually a matter of a few $100s. But the overhead is driving to appointments and all that stuff, right? It's just not a big overhead. The licenses aren't super expensive. None of those things are a burden in our system, in our business model. But what you have to bring to it is a serious attitude and an investment of time. So when I say the word serious business person, I think about somebody who is approaching this right. They'll be a student of the business. They want to make something happen. They're not a dabbler. They're not a spare timer, right? So then the next question, once you get past that one, is your business for real? Interesting question also. What does it mean for your business to be for real? Well, that means you're running it intelligently, you're controlling expenses. All these things we'll talk about as we go through the next few pages. But it also means you begin to understand how this business works. If I say the letters NPR, and right now you're listening, you don't know what that means, obviously means you're fairly new in the business, and but you need to know what net point ratio is. Because that's measuring, just bottom line. If you and your team sold to 100 people, let's say 100 insurance policies, how many of them are left? 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year, and 13 months from now. And 13 months is the real high water mark. That percentage is your net point ratio. If it's above 75, I think you feel pretty good about it. I think you should feel better at 80 or 85. We have teams that are in the 90s. We also have teams that struggle with this. And they're in the 60s. And that means your business is not for real. And in that indicator, right? And so we'll talk about these things. Of course, we're taking inspiration from the TV show Shark Tank because there, people, potential entrepreneurs are usually early entrepreneurs have an idea. Maybe they got in the business started. Maybe the product's even being sold. They like to see all those things, so they really can measure if it's real or not. And they fire a bunch of questions at people. What's your preparation? What's your understanding? What's your marketing? What are you doing? With your leadership. And then there's those powerful two words a lot of them say to most of the businesses: I'm out. I'm out. And every once in a while, one of them says, I'm in. They like what they hear. And so, if I were sitting with you one-on-one, and I wish I was, somehow I'd like to, like Santa Claus, where I could be in all places in one day. But if we were sitting one-on-one, I would ask you these questions. If you were very early in the business, I'd ask you about your attitude, about your commitment level. What's going on in the home? If you're married, what is the spouse? A lot of these kinds of things. The longer you're in the business, the more I'd inquire of those other things too, but I'd also add to it the serious business questions. Your new person, I'm going to talk to you about, are you getting people down to the meeting? Are you getting appointments set? Are you learning how to set appointments effectively? How to invite somebody to a meeting? Are you learning the presentation? That's all part of being a serious business person if you're early. Are you practicing the presentations? Are you mastering your craft? You can do all that part-time. And then ultimately you'll build a business that's for real. Anyhow, enough of that. Let's go ahead and talk about a phrase maybe you don't think about in the terms I'm going to discuss it. I'm going to talk about now investing as a mentor. The great majority of the time of a senior leader in this business, and the nature of it, is mentoring. Swan Wen spends a tremendous amount of his time mentoring. Ed Milet, Monty Holm, a tremendous amount of time mentoring in a variety of ways. And individual conversations, mentoring teams, leadership teams. Monty has a beautiful place in Utah where he invites people. Many of you have been there. And Ed hosts all that kind of stuff. But if you were investing in a mentor, and I ask myself these questions because I do. And so let's talk about this. Before I invest my time in someone, I'm going to ask myself at least these 5 questions about them. First, foremost, are they a good person? If I don't have a good person to work with, there's nowhere to go. They're going to mess up their relationships. The relationships already are messed up. And the people they bring would tend to be like them, and it's like a virus. So if I get a clear sense in conversation that somehow through the filters a bad person walked in, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. Right? So I'll ask, are they a good person? Let's say the question's yes. The next one is, do they have a quality partnership in the home? And this, of course, is a question about marriage. And frankly, the majority of people I would recruit, my base shop would recruit, would have a marriage relationship. I want that strength. I want that commitment, those kinds of things. They have a serious other. What do they call that? I'm going to call it that too. Significant other, a serious relationship. I'm going to ask them about that. What's their thinking about those things? I pay a lot of attention how someone talks about their sweethearts, the person that they love, right? That most serious relationship. If they're flippant and casual and silly about it, then they're going to be flippant and casual and silly about other important relationships. And that's, frankly, something that I'm not looking for. Certainly not someone I'm going to mentor. And so I'm also then, but let's say, good person, good home situation, good relationships. Cool. Now I've got a person of integrity that's building a quality life. Yeah, that's the kind of person I want, isn't it? So next I'm going to look at, number 3, what's their track record in life? It's not important to me that they make millions of dollars. I wasn't. But what is their track record? Did they tend toward leadership? when they were growing up as a kid, when they in school. You know, I'm just going to ask about their life and what goes on. What are they involved in? You know, if they have a group of people that tailgates together at the local university's football game, you know, are they the leader of that group? Are they the one that put it together? You know, that kind of thing. It all sounds maybe a little silly or casual to you, but it's not. That tendency toward that leadership is a big deal. It also means people look at them, more seriously. They're going to take their recommendations more seriously. Their referrals are going to have more power. So I got a good person with good relationships in their life. They've got a track record, positive track record, tend toward leadership. Now I've got to ask a critical question. That's all good. I have had people, big yes, yes, yes on those first three, and they mess up this one, and they're undone. Fourth question, will they take direction and grow? Usually that's going to take a little time to figure out. But I've been in interviews where people start correcting me about what they think this is, which is okay. You know, but it tells you something. I've had people ask me for counsel. I give it. I know it's right. There's no theory. 38 years, you run into it all so many times, and you know how to handle these things. And they go, no, I don't know that that's true. You know, I don't know if that would work that way for me. You know, those kinds of things. I get it. No problem. You know, if I'm Butch Harmon in golf, and I've groomed the likes of Tiger Woods and many other winners, and you're coming in here struggling with your game, I think you ought to take my direction. I think you ought to just dedicate yourself to it. And are you willing to grow personally? Are you willing to continue to strive to be a good person and become a better person? You know, you're going to get even stronger relationships in your life, in your marriage. You know, and because this business requires growth, doesn't it? For any of us who've been around a little while, we know it requires growth. People come at you from all angles and have all kinds of different issues in their life and baggage, and our mentoring and coaching and friendshipping and all of that stuff is critical to them having a chance to win. But they'll drive you crazy. You know, all that stuff is part of it. And so our capacity has to increase. You know, an area we got to improve in, people will criticize the leader. Are you going to take that personally and hate them back? That'll be completely counterproductive. That will cause failure on both directions. So that's but can you grow past where you take that personally? You know, it's never fun, but you do get to the point where it slides off pretty quick. You know, you have that Teflon coating that do they still use Teflon? Anyway, I'm sure on something that, you know, where it just slides off, doesn't stick, you know, and you learn from it. Can you take criticism and take the legitimate criticism and go, you know what, I do need to get better there. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I should handle it this way next time. Well, that's someone who's willing to grow, who understands the better they get, the better life's going to become. The better they get, the better the business is going to be. The better they get, the more money they're going to make, right? And so the critical fourth question of 5 that I ask when I'm considering investing as a mentor, in other words, I'm the shark circling you, am I going to show you how to win big as an entrepreneur, good person, quality partnership in the home, track record in life, will they take direction and grow? And here's the 5th one. This one's going to take a little bit of time to measure too, because everybody can talk a good game. Do they want it bad? Now, sometimes you'll have somebody new in the business, man, I want this so bad, I love this thing, I've been dreaming about this all my life. A couple weeks later, you can't find it. You have another person who's quiet. You're not quite sure where they're coming from. But inside, the pot's coming to a boil, right? You'll see that. It'll manifest itself that they'll be coming to the meetings, they'll be making the effort, they'll get to the convention, they'll be in the meetings not screwing around, you know, and you see the burn. When they run through tough times, they're fierce competitors. And so I look at these things, and if you're taking notes, of course, we'll post this, and you can review it again. Man, do you want to ask those questions about people? If I'm going to work with somebody, I want to make sure that they're looking good in these areas, right? So I started this not just in particulars about your business, but these are intangibles, aren't they? You know, not that intangible measure and track record, and that all these things have very tangible results. But I guess you could call them intangibles. And but when I find somebody in this thing, I'm going to invest in them, right? Not all these people win, right? Still number 5 is going to determine it ultimately. Do they want it bad? Because to be a successful entrepreneur, you got to want it bad. Yeah. All right. I'm done with that. Here we go. Now we're going to start talking about tough questions. I'm going to ask you some tough questions about business expenses. If I were sitting with you, now I still haven't gotten to your NPR, have I? Still haven't talked about production per recruit. I still haven't talked about your licensing percentage. You know, in terms of you recruit X amount, how many of them, what's the percentage getting licensed? Those are other tough questions I'm going to ask you. But first I'm going to start talking about how you manage yourself financially. Why? Because this is a huge cause of business failure. I've had so many talented people. You know what? I've had guys that could answer, that had the right answer for all 5 of those questions I just reviewed with you. And they screwed up here and in personal expenses, which we'll discuss next. And they blew up their businesses. They blew up their business. They had a chance to make millions. And people as talented or more talented than I am wanted it bad and blew themselves up and destroyed themselves. Couldn't weather the tough times because they just gotten so foolish. I mean, names are on the tip of my tongue that I won't share. I'm not looking to embarrass anybody. That were in a perfect position to win. Had excellent mentorship. You know, and I think of the ones that I was mentoring, and they're just talent, great spouses, character galore. And they blew it here. All right. So, tough questions that I'm looking for in our one-on-one as you sit across from me. You have a winning business attitude. Business attitude. Again, if you're seeing this, you notice business is capitalized and in bold letters. I'm looking for businessmen and businesswomen. I want people that take what they're doing here seriously. I already talked about that. They're approaching it as a business person. As a business person, you pay attention to making money, saving money in reserves, and keeping your expenses down. It's interesting, being here in Silicon Valley, we've got these giant companies like Google and Apple. Just hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's interesting, you hear things about how they waste money. Just because they've got so much, they're making so much. That's always a warning sign to me. You're never really too big to fail. But that part aside, I'm not worried about Apple, it's 800-some billion, or Google, it's 600-some billion. But the reality is you don't have any of that luxury. I knew from the beginning I wanted to make money and save money. That meant I was going to keep my expenses down. So I got metal chairs, not padded chairs. Why? They were like $4 a chair cheaper, right back then. You know, we searched around. We duplicated some audio tapes. We'd search around and found a place we could get it for like 97 cents. I'd sold them for $1. And we could do things that way. We searched for offices that weren't fancy in A, you know, all this A stuff where, you know, you talk about A and B space. And we'll talk more about that here. But we just kept it clean. You know, and that's because we had a business attitude. So pay attention to this. Because this may be, for some of you, this is why you won't make it. For some of you, this is one of the reasons why you will make it. So what's the primary objective of your business? Right? Well, to do the right thing, absolutely. To help people, no question. Those are the intangible, character-based, morality-based objectives of your business. Now just talk about it from a businesswoman's perspective or a businessman's perspective. What's the primary objective of your business? Profitability and stability. You're not doing anybody any good if you're not profitable because you'll be out. You're gone. Right? If you don't have stability, You're going to be on a roller coaster emotionally. It's hard to be a leader that way, an effective leader. You can be a bad leader, so it's not hard to be a bad leader. But it's hard to be an effective leader. You know, one of the things I've loved most about our business, our industry, our model within our industry, is that no matter good times or bad, right now we're on a good run. Have been for a little while. Life's great, you know, and we do well. But our time of greatest growth, you know, I mean, just, you know, 40, 50% growth was coming out of 2008 and all the trouble there. 09's growth year, but then 10, 11, 12, 13, great years. Accelerated years, 14, 15, great years. We stabilized a little bit, still growing. One of the reasons stabilize is life is good. People are getting complacent again. But our business does well, good or bad times, unless you blow it in your expenses. Then even, you know, no matter what's happening, right, you mess it up. So the primary objective of your business from a business attitude standpoint is profitability and stability. So you always got to be asking yourself this question. Is my business overhead, right? Are our costs too high? All right? Is all this too high? Is there ways I can cut it and make it and stay just as effective and keep it lean? Do you have too much space? I hear people get these huge space, like, so they can brag about it. You know what I brag about? Is how small my spaces were when we were running a giant base shop. I was running this giant base shop with 2,200 square feet. 2,200. 1,000 of it was in the BPM room. Might have been 1,200 now that I think about it. You know, and then 1,000 was in 5 little offices and a reception area. And we just kept it lean. Everybody didn't have an individual office. They got a filing cabinet, maybe. Some of them got a drawer in a filing cabinet. And that's how we did it. Their trunk space in their car was an important storage area. And so we kept it lean. We saved money. We impressed people with who we were as people and how we handled ourselves. Right? Our places were clean. They were neat. They were professional in attitude, approach. Right? They were strong in character. They were positive in attitude. But we weren't trying to make landlords rich. Right? We're trying to make our families wealthy. Impact the next 3, 4, 5 generations. Right? You need to understand the difference between A and B space. And you think you're going to recruit people because you get some nice office. Now, you may have a nice big office. People go, ooh. But you know what? They aren't going to stick because of that. It's all going to come down to whether you deal with them honorably. And are you even likable? Right? If you're all about your pride and arrogance and all that stuff and showing off, man, you're going to run a revolving door business. It's not going to matter whether you got A or B space. And so what would I do if I were going out there right now, even with all my resources? I'd either get very, very small A space or a bigger, if I was running a base shop doing that from scratch, B space, clean, neat, put some decent stuff on the walls, paint it once in a while, shampoo the carpets once in a while, and we just run a machine. And our expenses would be low. And I look for those things. I look for opportunity. I do that when I'm buying houses. You know, there you go. You know, the house I'm, you know, sitting in my office here, my home office, doing this webinar. Paid $6.5 for it, but the family that built it put $10.5 into it. But things sadly fell apart in the marriage, all that kind of stuff. No other details need to be shared, and they ended up in a situation where they sold it to us for $6.5. That's the kind of opportunity I look for. I look for the same thing in space. Can I get a sublease off somebody who was too stupid and got an office that's too big? You know, and I get it for less. You know, and without all the same deposits and stuff. Lean and mean. I get my leases in short term. I never have gone past a 3-year lease. Never, ever. They try and entice you with some price stability, but my business changes too much. It's too dynamic. I may need more. I may have moved out a bunch of people and need less. You know, I want to stay in control. So I always pay attention to the length of the lease term. I pay attention to staffing. We always kept our staff costs down because typically we tried to bring in spouses of our leaders to help with the business, to help with operations. Meanwhile, we were training somebody who was going to run operations for their spouse as they became more and more successful. We didn't get expensive furniture. I love Penny Oy. I went in new office Penny Oy, and it's all this nice stuff. I said, Penny? She says, no, I got this on Craigslist for like 20 cents on the dollar, some of it for 10 cents on the dollar. And she'd really hunted and done that and done a great job. I didn't even know what they do with copier leases nowadays. What we have with being able to get a printer and stuff and the inexpensive nature of that, you can handle most of that stuff. But if it's anything large, we always took that out somewhere, right? And had somebody print it in volume. And we just kept all this cost under control. This is a question you ask yourself almost every few months, certainly every 6 months. Is my overhead, my costs, are they getting away from me? Am I starting to get foolish with it? We're starting to make more money, but are we getting now casual with it because we're feeling too comfortable? Right? I have some advice for you. Play scared. Doesn't mean play stupid. Doesn't mean being afraid every second. But I want you to look at your business and know, hey, there's downturns sometimes. Stuff happens. All right? Terrorist attacks happen. You can get sick, like I did. And all of a sudden there's stuff that's really hampering what you can do for a while. We had I remember a major earthquake back in '89. And people couldn't get to the office, and that was going to sound like a pun. I was going to say it shook people, but I meant emotionally, of course. Had it been a much worse quake, right, we'd have had to deal with that for 3 months, 6 months, a year. If I had my office up in Santa Rosa, that community is going to be taking 2 and 3 years to recover. You had people in all these wonderful neighborhoods that burned down to a house. And that's where I grew up. That's why I mentioned it. Right? It's a couple hours drive north from me. And so we look at these things. That one night people went to bed. Somewhere during that night they woke up. Whole cities were on fire. Crazy. Right? And so, why? Because they got a 100-year wind. A wind that would only come along like it did every 100 years. Knocked down a bunch of electrical stuff, sparks, boom, fires everywhere. The wind just kept blowing the sparks, burning down homes. And so, you look at these things, they're equivalent things like that in business. If you're paying attention, if you're doing the right things, you can weather any storm. And you know what else it does? It helps you control your attitude. I'm able to play relaxed, be patient, deal with the stuff people are struggling with. Sometimes they're taking out on me. And I'm going to play it cool because everything is cool, in our lives, in our home, with our children, in our business. All right, let's ask some more tough questions about your personal expenses. I've seen people manage their personal expenses, screw up their business expenses. I've seen people control their business expenses, screw up their personal expenses. Most of the time, they screw up both, right? It's the same attitude. But I've always been fascinated by people who really controlled their personal expenses and then blew up their business expenses, right? I'd be tempted to spend more money on my family, not more money on my copier, right, and my staff and in my office. But I don't want you to mess up in either one. So let's talk about personal expenses a minute. Do you live within your means? If not, do it. Shrink how you're living. You need to sell a house, sell a house. You need to get rid of some cars, get rid of some cars. Are you and your spouse on the same page? If you're married, you got to get on the same page this way. Can't have one big spender and one frugal person. You got to go with your strengths. Cindy and I were talking about a whole bunch of business and investment stuff last night, and she defers to me a little bit on this because this is my world. It's my strengths. But the reality is, she's pretty good in this area too, and certainly her feedback is wonderful. And so we really do talk about these things, talk it through. buying a home this, or whatever it might be, or what we're doing with our savings, tax situations, just all of it. What are we doing to move the company forward? How are we going to do that? What's the best way to do it? Right? We get on the same page in relation to all these things, but we've been on the same page as it relates to our personal expenses. Just yesterday, she said to me, let's make sure we don't have any larger expenses for a while we're doing some things, and that we've got to get handled, both business and some in personal real estate. I said, it's a good idea. We just know that we're on the same page. It's a blessing. Are you setting aside for taxes? I can't tell you how many people we've had in the company. They make the money, they spend the money. Hey, there's a tax bracket that you're in. Federal, and if you're in some state, you better pay attention to it because they're going to want their money. And they will rotor-roo to you on both ends to get it. And it's just not something you want to mess with. It's the law of the land. I don't like paying the taxes I pay. Resent the heck out of it because of all the waste. They weren't wasting it, it wouldn't bother me as much, anywhere near as much. But I'm not going to go off on that tangent. You still got to set aside for it whether you like it or not. Don't be silly in that area. Don't break the law. If you're getting tax liens and stuff, that means you're playing the fool. Get your act together, control your expenses. You'll be a better leader. Are you infected? This is another one with the show-off bug. That's the one, attitude-wise, that eats you up in your personal life, where you do too much with your house, too much with your car, too much with the travel, too much with your bling, because you got the show-off bug. You're infected. Problem is, it's contagious, right? Because people think, oh, that's what people who make money do. No, people who really make money and get it, who are wealth builders, right, understand you don't build wealth by spending money, you build it by not spending money. Right? By treating your savings goals as sacred from a business standpoint. We meet those goals, then we can do other stuff. We don't. Then you ought to run it the same way. Hey, we all want recognition. We all want people to think we're special. Kind of a natural part of we want people to ooh and ah over us, right? Control that stuff. Right? Control that stuff. Become a little bit more self-recognizing. Right? Feel good about yourself because you're a good person. You got good relationships. You're an effective leader. You're making a difference in people's lives. Don't get too caught up in the show-off bug, or you will be undone. That's one of my friends I'm thinking of right now. This top guy in the organization, gone, blown up because he got bit by the show-off bug. He had to do the cars, way overdid the house. Then there were some setbacks, changes in compensation, a little slowdown, bang. That was it. What a tragedy that was. So you got to think about the difference between spending and saving. Spending, pretty gratifying, getting something cool. Saving is longer-term thinking. But man, when you watch that grow, when you watch that compound, I was showing Cindy an investment of ours and the contributions we make to it every year, and I mapped out the next 10 years and showed her what that was going to accumulate to. That's exciting. Then I showed her 15. And what if we up that contribution a little bit? I'm 65, we're talking about that. I'm talking about between now and 80. I want to be building my wealth when I'm 80 also, right? I want more to give away. Same time, bless our family and those multiple generations. And so get in the game here, both personal and business expenses. And you got to ask this question, what season are you in? If I'm sitting on a few $100 million and I'm 85 years old, right, and I've had a heart attack and some issue, you know what? I'm kind of going to get busy being a philanthropist, right? There's some things I'm going to want to make sure that I've impacted long after we're gone. I'd make sure my family was entirely taken care of, right, that they were set, and then I'd make sure that I was out there making a difference in the ways you can, because that'd be the season I was in, right? I'd be holding on a little tighter to that stuff if I was 40, because I'd want to be building that wealth in that time I mean, we talk to people about this in the investment world. You're in one season at 25 and unmarried, another season at 33 and married, another season at 40, 45, 50, 60 then, right? There's these different seasons that you're in, and you've got to not mistake it. We get people that are in their 20s start making some money, early 30s, and man, they're just blowing it all over the place, all about conspicuous consumption. Effective the show-off bug when they ought to just pouring it on in their investments to build real wealth. They start making more money than they ever thought they would. They're making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, whatever. And that's, it's not like you discount any of that. That's great. But the reality is, that's not big money. I mean, you're getting taxed, and you raise your personal expenses, your business expenses, and next thing you know, you aren't really saving what you should, or you ought to be saving twice or three times that. Come on. Pay attention. And for all but 2 or 3 or 4 of you on this call, that ain't your problem, right? You're not making that kind of income. Get the habits right early. Look, if you get the habits right when you're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, and you commit to keeping those habits when you start making $250,000, $500,000, and $1 million and $2 million, you're going to like what's happening in your life. You're going to look at the world differently than almost everybody else out there on the planet. And I'm telling you, when you get a chance to win. So there's a bottom line to this. Building personal wealth requires discipline. All right. That may be different than what you were thinking I was going to talk about, but I want you to win here. So I'm going to look at the intangibles. I'm going to look at how you manage yourself in your business expenses. I'm going to look at how you manage yourself in your personal expenses. Now, if I got somebody who's squared away in those areas, those 5 questions, and these 2 areas where we just talked about, all right, then we're going to talk about this stuff. So all this is like a job interview. It's a mentoring interview. As Rich Thawley or any other leader, am I going to be willing to mentor you, spend that time with you? My time's worth thousands and thousands of dollars an hour. And so if I'm going to invest that in you, I want to know you got your act together and how you're running your business. So here we go. We're going to do a business analysis. Now it shows a picture of a guy putting his fingers on his temples, right and left, and looking at a crystal ball. Right? Now what does that mean? It means I can see your future. How? I can see your future when I look at the following things. When I look at these indicators in your business, tell me how you're running it, what you're doing in it, I know your future. Pure and simple. Cause, effect. Right? Action, result. And so I can see your future when I look at something we'll call your circle chart. That means I've drawn a circle, put your name in the middle, and you're starting to put those that you've recruited and teams that you've built in your base first. One of the things I look at when I'm in early stages of mentoring somebody, I say, give me your base shop circle chart. Right? Show me the number of people that are direct to you, that are active. Tell me whether they're licensed or not. Show me how deep they are, and how many of those people are licensed. Anyway, these kinds of things, and I want you to do a circle chart for me. Because at a glance, I know how profitable you are, whether you're heading in the right direction, whether you're providing overlapping leadership. I'm going to find strengths, and I'm going to find weaknesses. And we're going to keep building on those strengths, and I'm going to coach you on overcoming those weaknesses. I want to see your super base width. How many SMDs do you have reporting to you? What kind of numbers they do? So we're going to measure your super base. I'm going to look at those circle charts because that's going to tell me so much about your profitability. We'll talk about that again in a minute too. I'm going to look at something we'll call agency legs. That's a term I first heard from Ed Milet, and I liked it. All right, that's legs that are 4 deep. That means I recruited you, or you recruited somebody, they recruited somebody, and they recruited somebody. So from you and me, we got a 4 deep leg. What does that do? It provides strength and stability to the team. It means you got several people that are in that leg doing the business, and everybody energizes everybody else. And so I'm measuring 4 deep legs when I look at your circle chart. Now, every circle chart, you have 14 people, active licensed people reporting to you, and none of them are 4 deep. You've got an issue. You've got a stability issue. There's not enough happening on these people. You know what shallow roots in a plant does, or a tree? Wind blows it over. Hot sun fries it. So you got to have roots. Depth in your business are roots. And so you got to have people on your team that are actively doing the business 4 deep. Now, if you showed me a team 16 wide with agency legs, we're going somewhere. Good things are happening. I'm going to want to start being a little bit more involved in your career because I've got somebody who's getting it done. So I'm going to look at that circle chart. I'm going to look at how many 4 deep legs you've got. I'm going to look at your personal recruiting and personal production. We've got a guy out there named Cash Rastan, and he just killed it last month. Did over 200,000 points personally. I think he's top personal producer. His base shop is the top base shop. His super base was the top super base. Well, guess what? I'm just watching Cash a little more closely. Now, it's got to be kept consistent. You got to be doing it month in and month out. Just like a guy like Eric Olson, just kills it, the base shop every month, though he was number 2 last month, but every month, right? It's one of the great ones. But then I'm measuring other things too, looking at your business. So I'm going to measure these next 4 indicators, including personal production and recruiting. It's pretty easy to look at. What's your base shop recruiting and production? What's the super base recruiting and production? Now and what's your production per recruit and your net point ratio? This tells me so much about what you're doing. Let's say you have a 63% net point ratio. I know you got a problem in your market. You're not recruiting the right caliber of people. It's wrong socioeconomic, right? Wrong age, not enough married people, making enough money. You're in trouble. Net point ratio, I know what's going on in your business. Also, you probably have some sales practice problems. You're not doing a needs analysis. You're not getting referrals. And all these things strengthen the net point ratio. You're not having your people drill with each other. Maybe you don't have a standardized presentation, which means they're all over the place. Every field trainer is different. Well, that'd be dumb, right? How do you duplicate that? You can't. You can duplicate chaos. You just get more chaos, right? I wanted there to be order in my business. I wanted to be clear ways of doing it, right? So I'm also going to measure production per recruit. If that's too low, that tells me, again, that one really tells me you're in the wrong market. And probably you've got some sales practice problems there too. These two things go together. Low production per recruit is also generally tied to low net point ratio. That's why I put them together. So I'm looking at your production and recruiting numbers, but then I start drilling down into how you really do, what you're doing with those people, what you're doing in the field. And so I'm going to then look at your quality of market, age, marital status, household income. I'm going to look at those sales practices. Are you selling multiple products? Are you doing IUL and term? All of these things that I've mentioned. When I'm coaching people, I'm going to look in these areas. I want to know what your recruit to license ratio is. I want to know how many licenses you have in your base, in your super base. I'm going to measure this stuff, right? Because this tells me where you're headed. Now, if you're recruiting 100 people, you license 11 of them or 8 of them or some astronomically microscopic number like that, right, that makes me want to beat you with a stick, right? That just tells me you're not communicating, building relationships with people. Your leaders aren't doing that. Come on, let's go get these people licensed. And when you do, you start building up these numbers of licenses in your teams. Hey, more outlets, more production, more stability, more profitability. Yeah, I think I want my business to be profitable and stable. Didn't I mention something about that? And so I'm measuring these things when I'm interviewing you for mentorability, for mentoraciousness. And then we make up words. You understand what I'm saying? I'm also going to measure production per license. What's going on with your licensed people? What's the activity level? Are they staying in the right market? So here's the next bottom line. It's a business. Treat it like one. It's a business. Treat it like one. Don't hide from stuff. Look at it full on. If you got an issue in your business, you don't know how to deal with it, that's where you reach for mentorship. If we're talking about this stuff, there's no mystery in this for me. I know exactly what you got to do. I know what you got to say. I got to know what you got to do. I got to know I'll know what attitude you got to have. I got to know how you got to work at it. I know how long it's going to take to fix. All right, let's go to town. Impress me. And never forget, never, width equals profitability and depth equals stability. You can't just pick one. You can't do it. You can't pick just one. You got to do them both. You want to go wide, you got to go deeper and stronger. There's some people in this company, big guys, making a lot of money, some have gone real wide, but they don't have enough depth. They don't have enough strength down line from those legs. And they're working on that, and I'm coaching them on that. Same time, we have people that don't have enough width. They've done a great job with their depth. All right, but I want them to have both. I want them to increase their profitability. Yeah. You got to have both. You good? You understand now? Can't pick just one. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, I'm going to finish by talking about the persistent challenges that I see when I'm working with people. When people come to me and say, will you mentor me? There's someone that's been texting me just recently from Florida. And I gave him a challenge. And he's given me fairly, regular reports. Not often, but reports. He just gave me a report. He hit some new high water marks. I asked him some questions about his NPR, and I'll ask him some more. Because he asked me, what do I have to get to where you'd pay attention a little bit to my career? And I told him. And he's just about there. And then we're going to have some good conversations. All right, he might make my Hawaii interview list when I coach people when I'm in Hawaii around the clock there. But this is the things I'm looking at that are persistent challenges in people's businesses. And I would say consistent weaknesses. And if you overcome these things, you're gonna kill it. You're gonna love it. And I'd say, and you'll hear the words, I'm in for me. And that means for me, I'm in on wanting to be a little involved in your career, contributing to it, doing some coaching and mentoring, helping you really understand how to get the most out of this machine and how to build a happy life. So here they are. There's 6 of them, persistent challenges. 1, personal width. That is the single most consistent weakness in people's organizations. You get a few people, as you suppose, and you just work with them and work with them, and you stop growing. Say, I'm so busy with these people. Just go slap yourself. All right? See, when you sit down with me, you can't get that stuff past me. Right? You can't BS me on that stuff. Right? Because I know how this works. I know what I've had to do. I've had to know what I've had. So many people I've watched win have had to do. Personal width. Right? You got to get stronger there. You should be recruiting a minimum couple of people a month. You recruited none this month, you got to go. Now you're going to have a month where you got to go get a couple of 3s. You got to go get it. That's the way. You got to stay in the quality of market so you can have a good net point ratio. I'd say that's the second biggest challenge in most people's businesses. They drift into weak markets, and shoot, if you want gold, you got to go dig gold ore, right? If you want iron, you can get iron ore. But I tell you what, you got to stay in that right market. Then your net point ratio will be good, and lots of good things. You'll be profitable. Next is agency legs. You don't go into the depth that you should. Right? Now, if you don't go wide, you can't go deep in anything. You don't stay in a quality market, it'll keep falling apart. When you have your width and you have a quality market, you got to make sure you overlap. Teach them, right? The recruit's not a recruit until you get a recruit. Next one. So the depth goes. I want 4 deep licensed legs. We have 4 deep licensed people. And now we got strength, stability, profitability coming from width and, we like it, width and depth. Next thing, personal field training in the production areas. I see people quit that too soon. I can see them not be the master copy. All right, that's the 4th thing. You've really got to be the best in your base. You almost want people clamoring to go out with you because they know you're so solid at it that they want to watch a master at work, right? And so that's the deal. Be the master copy. So make sure you're doing that job in field training and production. Fourth area that I see, consistent weakness and persistent challenge. Your recruit to license ratio. I'm constantly astounded at how some leaders in their teams license so few people. You go to all that work, get the list, make the contact, get them down, right? Interviews, follow-up interviews, persuasion. They do the AMA, right? They start working their license, and you just let them drift. You don't keep selling a dream. You don't keep pumping them. You give all your attention to the next guy you're going to ignore pretty soon. It's just, sorry for the sarcasm, but that's really what's at. It's like you recruit somebody and throw them off a cliff. You got to let people know from the beginning. The license, just getting the license is where everything begins. And sure, we're going to be inviting people. We're going to be out field training while this is in process. But you got to get licensed. That's part of another reason I want to be a master copy, so I can make that impression. And you go, okay, I can do this. This isn't rocket science. And look at this. We're being successful in my market. Man, I'm going to get my license. Right? But your recruit to license ratio is one of the big areas for a lot of you on this phone call. And then the sixth one, consistently, a battle for everybody, nonstop. This is a front, if you're talking in the military, that never is at peace, and that's leadership development. You're going to constantly be fighting to develop leaders in your business. That's a matter of creating expectations, helping them when they start to whine, helping them when they're not being personally accountable, any of those kinds of things that that strong leaders can't do, right? We can't be whiners. We can't go, it's not my fault. They did it to me. It's the company. It's the guy who brought me in. It's my SMD. It's my whatever, right? And so I don't allow a lot of that, right? I don't want people who are dependent. I want people who are strong and independent, even better, interdependent with other strong leaders. And everybody's holding each other up. Everybody's got the right attitude about accountability, right? Everybody's working on personal wit, quality market, driving them 4D, out field training, getting the job done, licensing 25, 30, 40% of their people at least, and working hard on leadership development. And you gather, and you hold leadership retreats, and you have individual focus sessions. All of those things help you with leadership development. But those are the persistent challenges. You start getting A's on your report card in those 6 subjects, and we're going to be loving all over you. And your sweetheart's going to be loving all over you too, because you're going to be very attractive. Very attractive. All right, we're done. Let's go to the next and final thing. Keep your focus on the things that matter most. Keep your focus on the things that matter most. Don't be distracted with trips and parties and, all this kind of stuff. Stay focused on this, and you win. Everything else costs you money. All right. Next webinar, which is December 13th, 2017, the last one of this year, 9 a.m. Pacific. And since we're at the end of the year, but it's still, that's 17, 18 days before the end of the year, I want to have another good discussion with you about the power of goals and a plan. A goal without a plan is just a wish. That's a good one, right? Goal without a plan is just a wish. And you know in your heart you can't wish yourself to the big time. You can't wish yourself to financial independence anymore than you wish yourself to a great marriage or a great family. So we're going to talk about the power of goals and a business plan. I'm going to keep it fairly simple, maybe a little simpler than some of the things I've done in the past. But I want you to understand clearly, and I want to remind those of you who are going to let this drift into January if I don't remind you December 13th, right, to get on top of this stuff. And you can just, I'm going to stimulate your thinking. For a lot of you that haven't been through some of this stuff with me, I can't wait to get back on with you, right? We have 931 locations right now. 931 locations. And that's reality. 32. How are we growing at this stage of the event? And so, December 13th, we're in 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to have a good heart-to-heart about your focus, what you're focused on, the power of those goals, and a plan to make it happen. Right? Winning Big 101. No theory in that. Absolute practice. Right? There's a lot of stuff I don't get, but I get this stuff. All right, everybody. Thanks for being on. Love being in business with you. It's great to be back in the regular cycle of webinars again. It's good to have a strong voice. It's good to have increasing energy again. Love it. Man, I'm jacked about the next 10 or 15 years. Really jacked up about that. You know, you ought to be too. If I can be that jacked up at 65 about what the next 15 years are going to be like, how fired up should you be at 28 and 32 and 42 and whatever you are? All right. Love you. Proud of you. Thanks for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. And I sure do. All right, everybody. Talk to you next month. Bye.